my voice and yours, and anything that goes on the screen will be recorded. So if you sleep right now, no problem. You can pick up what we do at 3 o'clock in the morning on YouTube. So now we're recording. So that's what I wanted to start before we go ahead and do anything else. Some of the stuff is technical, so I know some of you guys are you in electrical? Yeah, so 2 of us are electrical here, the rest of you guys are mechanical, and you guys are background is in the electrical field too. Want to be electricians?
Not me.
Not me.
I'm a former college English.
So we want to learn something. We'll learn a few things.
And I can shock all the time, so I know what.
So annually we're moving to the semester, so we're introducing brand new 2 classes that's going to be renewable energy. And that's why this presentation really came to be. We're going to be using it for our students and members. So we follow the NEC book, which is the Bible for the electrical industry in the US. And I found a really nice book, down to earth, only for people who know the electrical field, is how to put together electrically ground and size the overcompression device and the conductors and everything else. You have to be, of course, understand what resistors and feeders. So this is not just for beginners. This is for people who know electricians or engineers, and they want to go to the next level and understand how to size master wind, solar, and fuel cell. Very nice. Down to earth, step by step, with a lot of information. So I based my lectures on NEC book, and this time I'm going to book it here. So there's a lot of things guys about the web. You just got these today. I think you probably have seen a lot of information by the way. So the reason for this presentation again is the NEC book comes every 3 years. This is the year that we've got a whole chapter, a whole article in the NEC book about wind energy. So finally, the code, the law, the electrical law is catching up with the wind energy. So that's why it's really nice now we have a code, an article in the NEC book that we can enforce and design based on the requirements. So that's really good. So so that's what I wanted to show you. Before I go also to the presentation, I always like to show you the NEC book article that came to be, and here is my NEC book. This is small wind electric systems. When we talk about electric turbines, guys, you can have, I think they make it now 4 megawatt. This article is not about the 4 megawatt. 4 megawatts is different big animals, and they have their own design. There's a lot of books about them. This particular one is for environmentally friendly, wannabe people who want to install a small system for their neighborhood or for their homes. So that's the most important thing in this article. I always say the most important limitation is right in here, right? So this is only for 100 kW or less. And I know us as electricians, 100 kW less is nothing in the scheme of the megawatt that we use. But those are what the farmers and a lot of environmental friendly people would like to erect a little tower and 18K, 22K just to power their own home. Just on average, a house, a residential house, on average, can consume 10 to 15 kW on average. So this is on average can power a unit like this on average can power probably I would say 8 to 10 homes, residential homes. So nothing to sneeze on average. So 100 kW can get you probably on average, statistically speaking, from the utility point of view. Usually 3 kW is what they allow for a house on average. So that would be probably 8 to 10 homes. A unit that can power 8 to 10 homes. And you can power as many of these units as you want. So you can put 100 or 1,000 of these powers and pair them with the grid. But the limitation is 100 kW or less. So that's the first thing I wanted to show. The articles that I'm going to talk about today is right in here. So if you, and I'm going to show you, so here's the small wind. This is a brand new. The other one, the other article, the NEC code book goes, it's solar photovoltaic. The NEC has a whole big article about the solar photovoltaic. This has been, believe it or not, that this article has been in NEC book since 1983. It's not new. Solar is not new. Wind in NEC book is new. It's in 2011. Believe it or not, the article is in 2011. So this cycle has been since 1983 cycle of NEC book, really great. A lot of people are installing it. So I based a few things about this system too. So that's my solar. And the last thing I want to show you is just to give you an idea where these information is coming from. Fuel cell. Fuel cell is becoming a big deal too. These are very similar equipment where chemically you can generate electricity. So I thought that since we're talking about renewable energy, that's another clean energy source. Not a whole lot of power you can get out of them, but they're around. There's another article that talks about them. That this presentation is based on. Okay, here we go. And if you're familiar with the electrical industry, when you bring all these, you can see this is your solar, this is your fuel cell, and this is your small wind. All of them right next to each other. When they bring multiple sources, and you'll start to see, when you bring multiple sources of power and you connect them to the grid, they call it interconnected system, and you have to pair it with the grid. So the code, have a really nice article. I don't know how many of you guys have been, the electricians know it. This article is called Interconnected System. Okay, where am I, Chad? Here, let's go back here. All right. This one, interconnected system. There you go. So this is, why did this again? It went down. There you go. This article, if you are to install this, the reason why you like to flash it, especially for the electrician, if you're doing solar or wind or fuel cell, and you tie into the grid, you have to pay a lot of attention to the integrated electrical systems. One major thing is you can't tie a system to the grid without powering it. Otherwise, your system will be motorized by the grid and burned. That's the least that could happen to you. So this will tell you if you have a generator, diesel engine generator, or if you have a wind, solar, fuel cell, and you need to tie it to the grid, interactive system they call it. You have to adhere to this code. And the most important thing in this article, two most important things. Number one, you have to mark the disconnect for all these systems. So if you have multiple sources of power, you have right at the service, you have to mark that you have multiple sources of power right at the service, so people know that there's multiple sources for safety. And you have to have disconnect for these sources. And the second important thing, as you tie it to the grid, you have to have an interactive system that parallels your generation plan with the grid. Put them in sync before you tie it to the grid. And if you are to lose the grid, storm, knocked out the transformer, you lost the grid. What are you going to do? That based on this, the interactive system, you have to isolate yourself completely from the grid so you can't feed power to the grid and kill the lineman and women for fixing the problem. So because now you're sending power to the grid. So these are very, very important articles because you tie a generation plant to the grid, you have to have an interactive system. One major protection for this interactive system, disconnect you from the grid upon the failure of the grid for whatever reason. You lose the power, you isolate yourself from the grid. So and they do it through the interactive inverter. There are contacts that they isolate you from the grid. So I thought just to show you these four articles that the presentation is based on. So we'll start. It's a long way, so what I'm going to do, since we have a couple of jump around guys, and this is brand new article. So what I did for the solar, I went directly into every single section in the code. I mean the wind. Since the wind is new, I kind of sliced it. This is a new article. For every single section of that one, just identify it and so forth. So what I'm going to go start with the wind, and feel free to stop me at any time. A couple of things that I want to talk about. If you go to this article, it's brand new. The limitation of this article, you have one or more wind electric generators. So you can have as many of these wind as you want. We talked about the limitation. The only limitation that you have is the size limitation. The only limitation right here is the size, 100 kW list. no 2 meg, no 3 meg, no 4 meg. This article does not cover 3, 4 megs.
However, I can have 15 of them.
Yes, you can have a
I'll
thousand.
look into the next one.
Yes, absolutely. There's one little problem though. Economically, it doesn't make sense to parallel these. You know, we start paralleling, we call them parallel. We start paralleling in one location. When you exceed 1 meg, 2 meg, that's when you have generators, and my generators put you in parallel. As engineers, it starts making more sense to parallel if you have 1 meg or 2 megs. But you can't. It includes, with the way they do it, as you're going to see, we have a generator, we have the alternator, and we have the inverter and the control system. So you have the turbine that spins, and as it spins, it generates power. That power that's generated is the most ridiculous voltage and frequency you can get. If you dump this power directly into your grid, you will burn it. That's the power that's generated by the wind. So to control the frequency, maybe 60 hertz, 120, 240, or 480, 277, you get you the right frequency and the right voltage so you don't burn the equipment. What they do with them is they go invert them to DC. Now they make them DC, and I'm sorry, inverter. So they convert them into DC and invert them back into AC at the right frequency. So they first convert the frequency, any frequency you want, make it DC, then you invert it back at the right frequency and the right voltage and dump it on the grid. So this is a big deal. You can buy the system as interactive, meaning you tie it with the grid, or you can live in the boonies and live by yourself, standalone. So no problem. If you want to go somewhere else when off the grid, that's okay for you. You can power your house with AC like all of us. Or you can be like part of 1% of the people who like to live somewhere else and power it with DC too. So you can get DC loads or AC. And my understanding, you can buy DC or AC loads depending where you are. And oh, by the way, what happened when the wind is gone? I can have a battery storage, as many batteries as I want, store the energy so I can use them when the wind is not there, or I don't need. So it's up to you. Obviously, if you have a standalone system, it will be a good idea to have batteries. So that's how the system is. This is probably the most important thing about the whole system, guys. As there are 2 ways of doing it. You can go live in the middle of nowhere and be isolated. They call it standalone system. And let me just start with living right here with the civilized people. They call it interactive system, meaning you're tied to the grid, right? So if you're living with civilized people and with an interactive system, here's what you need. So you got yourself a generator went here, and you generated a voltage that's so weird looking here. I can use my marker here. So say your voltage is as weird as this right in here, and then to rectify it, to make it a weird, this is all technical, what they do is they make it DC here. So they convert this one directly into DC. So I really care less about that ugly looking signal because I'm not burning any equipment. I'm not dumping it across my fridge and plasma TV or whatever. I convert it to DC. That looks like a line here. And then we invert it back at the right frequency and the right voltage. So it's supposed to be a nice sinusoidal wave like this with 60 hertz. And 120, 240, 480, 277, 208, 120, whatever voltage system that you decided to buy and invert it to get you. And then you tie it to the grid. I'll show you how they tie it to the grid directly. Before the meter is, they tie it either to the meter, or you can send power to the grid, or send power directly to your house. That's what they call it, the interactive system. My understanding, this probably would be the most common system because most of the people live where a grid is located, so you tie it directly to the grid. Now, if you decided to live somewhere else, no problem. You do the same thing. Now they added something. We have, because you don't have a grid right here, they added this system right in here where you have to have batteries. Now, it doesn't make sense if it's standalone unless you have a battery. You can't. Now remember, there's no grid at the bottom, no electrical grid. So you have to have a battery. So what they do, they have a battery and they have a charger for the battery. And the same thing, you still do the same function. You get the ugliest looking wave here, you convert it into DC, and back invert it into a nice looking AC wave that the system likes, that my system likes. So it's not that nice looking.
What's the conversion load?
The version load, there are two reasons for the diversion loads. There are two diversion loads. Diversion load number one is as you charge your batteries, control the charging for your batteries so they don't explode. They have a diversion load, so if you're charging too much and you don't want to charge the battery too much so it doesn't explode, there's a control system that diverges all this current directly to a bunch of resistors, believe it or not. And you convert that energy as a heat. So it's part of controlling your charging for the batteries. Part of the control of the charging mechanism for the battery. So they have a bank of resistors. I'll show you a couple of pictures. Bank of resistors sitting there, and as they start charging, as controlling the whole charging process in this situation, they diverge the current directly into this resistor, and they start burning the current and the voltage as a heat to diverge it away from the batteries. And that's all part of my charge control system in this case. So the charge control system, the electronic system, looks at the batteries, too much current coming, because the wind, for example, what happens if you have a gust, a wind gust? You get a huge amount of energy all of a sudden, right? So what do we do with this energy? If you dump it directly into the batteries, you burn your batteries in this case, or your building. So when they take that huge amount of energy, sudden influx of a huge amount of energy, they take it, they burn it, and just dump it across the resistors as a heat. So, I didn't design the system, but it works.
Safety relief.
Yes, thank you. Safety relief.
I have a question. I have a system that uses an inverter, and it uses straight AC coming in the inverter charger. But the charger charges the batteries on 40 levels. It brings them up, and it floats forever.
Absolutely. You're reading the whole diversion load is a function of gust in the wind and charging the batteries in the system. If you have a huge gust coming out of the wind, instead of that huge energy for a short amount of time, dump it across the batteries and burn your batteries, or invert it and have a higher voltage.
The generator will run the grid.
So the generator is a little consistent, so it doesn't need that diversion.
It's coming like a circle. If you're in a motor that works like a sun anything, it just absorbs the shock. But it doesn't put anything back. It doesn't absorb it all in the current, it just dissipates it.
And they give you the option, if you live in nowhere, to get your loads at DC or AC, DC or AC. So they give you an option also of getting it as DC load. So that's basically the concept of standalone system and interactive. Any comments, guys?
On the sample system, once you got back to the converter, you still got that ability if you can.
As long as you have, the inverter has to be an interactive inverter.
Right. Use the same inverter for the top one.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're saying this is out there isn't a grid out
Yeah.
where you're at.
Yeah.
But you may have a house with AC loads.
Yeah.
Washer, dryer, whatever.
The question would be, would I be able to put the batteries here, the whole system right in here, with the charger, if I take and put it right at the top here, right here? Absolutely. So you're tied to the grid and you have batteries, no problem. That's a good system. The reason, yeah, then you can have AC and DC. They show it here with the standalone system, my understanding, because that's when you must have it in the standalone system. If you don't have a standalone system, it becomes almost an optional having a battery if you don't have a standalone system. Any comments, guys? This is basically the whole system. Now we're going to get into a little bit more details, and this is for the electricians. I thought this slide summarizes the whole. Now this is only electrical. I don't know if you guys can read it. 13 points, the most important 13 points in any system put together. Summarize the whole article. 13 points, without getting into the details. So I'm going to start with the first point, guys. If you look at the first thing, and if you have a wind turbine and you want to set it together, the first thing you want to start is buying that turbine itself. They call it the nacelle here, and it has the alternator and the control system. And what I did here, especially for the electrician, by the way, if you guys want this PowerPoint presentation, email me and I'll PDF it for you. We're going to be using it for our students too. It's really nice. I put the article where this information is coming from right next to it. Okay, so the most important thing is basically this is number one. That's your turbine right in here, right? So that's the mechanical electrical converter that converts the wind energy, kinetic energy into electrical energy, right? So, and it has most of the time you have to have the alternator and some type of a control system. Nothing to it other than you sit there. Any comments about that one? You get the wind there, kinetic energy, you push it, it rotates, that's your prime mover, they call it, convert it into electricity to an alternator, aka generator. The second point that they do is the tower. The specialized people in wind, they summarize installing wind in one word. The higher, the better. The higher you can push that turbine up in the air. If you can use, most of us, we can go up to 30 to 40 without any regulations in most of the places. You go higher than 40 feet up in the air, you get in cities and so forth, you get into a lot of regulations. So if you can go 70 feet, if you're in an area where they allow you to go 70 feet to 100, that's the best application for it. So higher the better. You're going to see people are building at the top of your roof. How much are you going to get out of well in your roof? So the key point is the tower. The higher, the better in terms of tower. And you guys can see the tower right in here going all the way. That can be from 30 foot all the way to 100 feet or even higher. Higher, the better. You can capture more energy if you put that turbine up in the air higher. What I did here for the tower, for now we're talking electricians, grounding and bonding. The most important thing when it comes to the tower is the grounding and bonding. So the code, and I laid out where the code says that, you have to create a grounding electrode system. Long story short, you have to have a drive a ground rod in the ground and tie a copper wire number 6 minimum to that ground rod and tie it to the tower, to the base of the tower. That's a must have by the code. So if you're installing this system, the first thing you're going to do as you erect this tower, you're going to have a ground rod. There are bases though, if the base is concrete and they have rebars in the base, which most of them do, the base itself qualifies as ground electrode grounding system or ground electrode system. But the most important thing is you have to have a ground rod, and this one is for the electrician grounding electrode conductor. Now we're talking to the technical here. Grounding electrode conductor, nothing other than a number 6 copper conductor you tie to the ground rod, typical like we do in any building. So that's the most important thing. So number 2, as I said, number 2 is going to be your tower and the grounding of your tower. Any comments, any questions about that? So we erected the tower. We have to go ground rod it and put number 6 tied to the ground rod, at least one ground rod, and good to go. And that's one number 3. If you see now number 3 right in here, now we're grabbing wires out of that turbine, right? Now we got captured wires. Grabbing wires out of that turbine. They call these wires, they call them output circuit. Output circuit. I did for the electricians only. This is if you don't, I always say, if you don't believe me, this is where you can find this information about. And being electricians, master electricians, guys, the first thing we install a system, we care about how big of a conductor do I need, and what type of conduits, and what type of disconnects, right? And what type of overcompression device. That's our job. So we can size this equipment, buy it, and throw it, and fix it, and install it. So if you go through this, it will tell you, and I'm sure the masters and electricians here, they know this by heart. We take the maximum current that this turbine can provide at the maximum voltage and maximum power. So if this turbine is 25 kW, and that's the maximum power that it can provide at say 480, 490. You take the 490 instead of 480, the maximum voltage, maximum power, and as we know, you divide the voltage, the power by the voltage, right? And there's a couple of power factor, and you find the maximum current. That maximum current, most of the time, you'll find it either you calculate it or you find it right on the nameplate of the equipment. So we got our maximum current, and we multiply it by 1.25, and right, Sam multiply 1.25 continuous load, typical, all the electrical, typical, that multiplier, safety factor, continuous load 1.25, and based on this, you size your conductors. Really no rocket science to it. And as we all know, guys, we're outdoor, most likely we're outdoor, so when we're outdoor, what do you use? PHSW, conductor insulation, so we're using PHSW, anything that has a wet-rated conductors. And when you go underground, since you're outdoor in a wet location, wiring-wise, I always tell you, feel free to agree or disagree, I always tell my students, being an engineer and mathematician, the wiring of method, if you're outdoor, is PVC conduit. You can use rigid, you can use EMP, but the conduit of choice, if you're underground, outdoor, or anywhere underground, is PVC schedule 80 or 40, and you put them underground and you pull your conductors. How many conductors you want? If it's 3-phase, you need to be carrying at least 3 conductors. And you have to have an equipment grounding conductor with it, and you have to have a neutral if the turbine has a neutral. If the turbine has a neutral. So that's what this calculation is all about. Any comments, guys, about this? With electricians, especially? Straightforward. The maximum multiplied by 1.25, and then 310.15 B16. You go get the conductor, and we came up with 4 arcs. How many 4 arcs? 3 4 arcs for the 3-phase. If it has a neutral, you usually at this size I pull full neutral. Say 4 conductors 4 arcs, and you size your they want you to size an equipment grounding conductor with it based on the overcomputation device that we're going to be talking about here. So you end up, if it's a 3-phase, you will end up with 5 conductor cable or 5 conductors in a conduit. So that's the number 3. If you go, any comments, guys, about these conductors, especially for the electricians, because we love conductors, and conduits. Are you guys emotional about them like that? They pay us to do them, so I have to be emotional about them. Number 4, if you go to number 4, and all these, by the way, are required by that code. We require conductors. The second most important thing is a disconnect. Those ones who are electricians, we require disconnect in a lot of stuff. AC equipment require a disconnect. HVAC equipment, almost all of them require disconnect. Anything that has a water in it requires disconnect. Any machine that does any function require a safety disconnect. After you push the button, you de-energize the equipment. Now it's safe. Then you go disconnect the equipment, lock it, tag it, and work safely on this air handling unit or chiller or rooftop unit. This is no difference. This is no difference. They require you to have a disconnect here. So that disconnect is going to be number 4, and they call it tower disconnect. And how do you size this disconnect? The same thing. You take the full load amp of that turbine, multiply by 1.25. Say you came up with 50, they don't make a 50 disconnect. The next standard is 60. You put a 60 amp disconnect. What's the voltage? So say it's a 600 volt disconnect, NEMA 3R. And you put that disconnect right next to the equipment. Where would you put the disconnect? There's a question. You have a couple of options. Okay.
Guys that work on the actual turbine have a stock.
Most of
It has to be, you cannot have a plane turning up there with the machine. I don't think we should be generating electricity up there. But you have to have a disconnect down by the where you can actually access it close
to the equipment. What they do, the disconnect, believe it or not, if you go read through about the whole disconnect, you can put the disconnect right on the tower, or on the building, or anywhere you want.
I think in Georgia we have to do it close enough visually and accessible to the electrician or the service person if where you would have to be, right? It has to be closer to the house.
Yes, where you can right to the tower or to the house. And
Doing multiple towers, so you can put multiple towers in one again.
Right. Right.
okay, so that's your tower. And the other thing, speaking of, you just said very important thing is how can you stop that turbine? Because you do maintenance on that. What the code says right on the stopping the turbine is says if you have to have some type of direction right at the tower that explain to the technician what's the mechanism of bringing that turbine into a halt. It could be mechanical, braking, bring it to a halt, or it could be electrical braking, we can brake it. So that's a requirement by code. You have to have some type of a label right on the tower that brings.
Yeah, or if you put it across, but if you don't use it like this, then probably
That's right.
Sure, the lines will generate those.
Yeah.
The lines will generate that access to that company. Then you have a small generator, yeah, type of lane physically
Electrically or mechanically breaking this equipment to a halt. That's awesome. You guys, now we've got a couple of electricians here now. You guys get into. Okay, so that's my disconnect. So the most important thing about the disconnect on the tower or somewhere on the building where you can see from the tower, and you can. One other thing, since we're not going to be probably able to, what are we doing with time? Going all over through. Okay, we have 5 minutes for this session, so probably we're not going to be able to go. One very important thing about the disconnect too, it tells you if you're using some way of, like you said, some way of controlling the speed of that turbine. One way of controlling the speed of that turbine is to take an output, a feedback from the output back into the turbine to control the speed of the turbine. If that's the way of controlling the speed of the turbine, they don't want you to disconnect the output circuit of the turbine, because you disconnect it, that turbine goes out of whack and starts spinning and destroy itself. So if the speed control of this turbine depends on the output circuit, like we're showing here, if you're taking a feedback wire here, sensor, right in here, say you're taking sensing the power here and going back to control the speed. So if you see the frequency going out of whack, you slow down, you adjust the system. If that's your mechanical way of controlling the speed of this turbine, then they don't want you to disconnect the output circuit, because it screw up the control system for this turbine. So that was really interesting. Okay, I have 5 minutes before I let you go, guys. And I want to continue with that one too. The second important thing is surge protected devices. For those of us who are electricians, this is not required by the code in 2011. I can't recall any place that require a surge protected devices in the code. In 2014, there's a proposal to require it on every service. That's the code in 2014. Every service, other than willing. And my understanding, this proposal that went through, it will be going for comments shortly. But they will require surge protected devices in every service for any building other than willing. Okay, this is a good place where require surge protected devices. We all know, guys, you have you get hit by lightning, surge coming into the system, you hit by lightning. This surge protective device is supposed to take that huge amount of pounds of current, suck it down to Mother Earth, and hopefully save your equipment. So this is one of I think the only place that I know of where a surge protective device is required. I can't recall any other places out of memory that we require this one. So you need a surge protective device. Any comments, guys, about this one? Taking that pulse into the system directly into Mother Earth. So that's number 5. If you go to number 6, rectifier. So we got number 5. We're going to go all the way to my rectifier, number 6. Rectifier disconnect, inverter disconnect. All inverters that you use, almost all inverters, be it solar inverters or wind inverters, they require disconnect. We love disconnects in the electrical industry for safety. So they require you to have 2 disconnects, almost in every inverter system or inverter system, one on the DC side and one on the AC side. for the most part. So this is no difference than any other disconnect, any other inverter system where you can require a disconnect. Here's my, so I require a disconnect. This disconnect is supposed to take the inverter and disconnect it from the system. And so here's my disconnect on the on this side, and also you have to have another disconnect on this side. So the rectifier inverter system needs to be completely isolated. And most of them are one package here. See what I said? You need to be completely able to isolate these two systems, or the rectifier inverter. In the solar system, we have only inverter. So what they do is the DC, they have a DC disconnect and also an AC disconnect, and that's required by code. So how do we size? You know, we are always, my always concern is how do you size this? The same thing, 1.25 times 1, the maximum current. Then if you guys look at these two, could be 1, 2. If you look at 4 and 6, if they're within sight, they could be the same disconnect for the inverter. The idea, your inverter might be inside the building. That's why you have to have a disconnect. But if the inverter is right next to the equipment, then that same disconnect, 4 and 6, could be the same piece of equipment. So they play with where you put these. Make sense for the electricians? And so that's your inverter. Number 7 obviously is going to be the rectifier. So what they do, because the voltage is out of whack that you can get over here, so they take whatever AC you get out of and convert it to DC. This is typical in a lot of systems that we cannot control the speed of the turbine. Diesel engine, we can control the speed of the turbine, right? The speed and the frequency. We have no control over Mother Earth wind. You can't control the frequency, but you can't control the speed. So what they do is the easiest way is to take whatever you get, whatever jump, frequency, and voltage you get, convert it into one line, DC, we love DC, and then you invert it back at the right voltage and the right frequency. And here's my inverter right now here, nice sinusoidal wave. So what's the rectifier? Taking AC, the junk AC, into DC. Smooth it. And then, so that's my rectifier. Diversion load, number 8. Number 8 is right here, and resistors. These two, number 8 and number 9, are completely associated with each other. They have, we talked about the gust that came. Now, with a system like this, you need to be able to control the voltage. If you have a gust, it will spin so fast that your voltage will go so high. You need to be able to take that voltage associated with current, which is energy, and dump it across somewhere else. What they do is they have big box full of resistors, and they use that full box full of resistors or inductors to control the voltage, the over voltage of the system. So part of your over voltage control system, right here. So you see a huge voltage coming out of your system. You dump it right across, and this is only for a short time. So if you come over here and your voltage is going right here, and all of a sudden went all the way visit the Lord and came back down. Now that little pulse came out of the gust, take it, suck it, throw it in the resistor, and off it goes. Okay, any comments, guys, about this 8 and 9? They're part of the control system. They call them dump resistors. The most important thing is gust. You get a gust, you can handle it. For these systems, if you guys install them, what they do is, what if you have a storm? What do you do with it? You have a big storm and the wind. You bring it to a halt. You have a storm by 65 miles an hour. Those guys don't run. They have mechanical and electrical braking, mechanical and or electrical braking. They completely stop them. Otherwise, they can't control them at a big storm. So that's your control system to control the voltage. So we need to be able to control the voltage within a limit that we can invert it. Otherwise, we burn the inverter if the voltage is so high. That's mostly done by manufacturers. And again, wind gust, control the wind gust. Number 10, we're electricians, so what do we care here? We care about wires. So the inverter DC input, we call this circuit inverter DC input, and guess that magic number, keeps repeating itself. Now we took the AC, we rectified it to DC, and we're going to dump it into the inverter. Now you go to the inverter and you see what's the maximum current that the inverter is rated for. Say it was 100 amp, you multiply it by 1.25, you get 125 amp, and you size your conductor based on 125 amp. 125 amp. And these conductors right here, now these are DC, right in this area, number 10. So most likely you're going to have a positive, negative, and equivalent are conductor. 3 conductors. If it's a bipolar, they're going to have a 4 conductor for 2 positive and a negative plus the equivalent current conductor. So, any comments guys about this? Usually, converter, inverter, the whole package is in one location together with the source, with the dump load. So, usually, these are associated with each other. So they're going to be in an area. In one area, might be even in one package, inverter, converter. Okay, so we got the DC output. If we go back into my inverter number 11, that's inverter. The job of the inverter is to have a smooth frequency, a smooth voltage to match the system that you have. 480, 277, 60 hertz, 50 hertz, mostly 60 hertz. So that's the piece of cake. Inverter output circuit. Now we captured it right in here, number 12. We captured the right frequency and the right voltage, and we're ready to dump it into the grid, right? So let's say 208, 120 at the right frequency, and now we're tying it to your main distribution panel. You tie it to the main distribution panel, and look how they size it. Again, you keep repeating, really not a whole lot in it. So you take the maximum current coming out of the inverter, multiply by 1.25. So, and then you size your conductors. If you're indoor, when you get into this system, if you're indoor, you have to put them, we'll talk about this, the number 12. Yeah, number 12 is big deal. As you bring the conductors from the inverter, and you say the inverter is outdoor, and I'm pulling these conductors into the building, I have to put them in a conduit. They have to be in some type of a conduit until you reach the disconnect right in here. Until you reach CB disconnect. Until you reach the disconnect. When you reach the disconnect, then you can use any wiring system after the cables or so forth. So that's my inverter. And the last thing, also being designers and engineers, we need to know what's the overcaptation device. You have to have an overcaptation device right in here. That we call it, and we size it also based on 125 times I max, so 100 times 125, you have 125 circuit breaker or fuse, and you put it inside this panel. Any comments, guys, about this? About this system? And then you captured it as AC. Well, guess what? Now you can go tie it to the grid in here, and and you can invert it back to the grid or feed it into your building, and you're good to go. Any comments? Yes, sir.
The grid coming off the grid, we a lot of surges on the grid. Wasn't there a protection thing that put in on those systems? You know they're parallel.
If we have
From the grid coming.
we always search. We always do. Engineered products, always. But it's not required. That's where 2014. It's 2014 will be required. Yes. That's where it's required. 2014. The service, if it passes through the comment, every service will require a surge protective device. And right now, it's an engineered. If you have almost every building that's engineered have a surge protective device. But it's engineered product. Should it be a disconnect between the distribution panel and the inverter and the meter? A distribution panel and the meter. You need a disconnect to disconnect you from the grid. The one that I showed right here, that one here, could be your disconnected, depending how you connect it, could be your disconnect that disconnect you from the grid, as well as a disconnect for the inverter. So you have to have a disc. If you tie, there are two ways of tying. If you tie before the meter, you bring the meter here, and before the disconnect, then you have to have a disconnected from the grid. If you tie inside the panel, then your circuit breaker will act as your disconnect from the grid.
Yeah, I was just thinking of, if the grid were down, that you could still continue to generate power in the building. But in this instance, you're not doing it, that's only in the hybrid standalone.
Yeah. If you, very good point. Now you have an inverter. If you have, let me just grab my black here. This inverter, I think I forgot to say one little very important thing about this inverter. If this is listed, it has to be a listed interactive inverter. Part of the listing, it has to have two major things. You have to have an arc fault protection on solar. Solar, they have to have arc fault protection. Now you have to these. And they have to be able to sense the loss of power. So we have a storm that knocked down the transmission line right here, right? And what's going to happen if you continue to generate power and feeding it to the grid, you're going to hurt somebody. That's what they tell us. But if you know how the linemen work, really, if you don't hurt somebody, they have a lot of rules that protect them. But they just don't want you to generate power back into the system. The system is down. For safety and control and so forth. So this inverter should be able to completely isolate you from the system right in here. Now the question would be, well, I lost the grid and I lost the wind at the same time. That's surprisingly why right here. There is a system, an inverter that has a bypass where if you lose the grid, it diverts the power into another panel, the wind power now to another panel, and you can take it and feed certain loads in your building. So you can have a source right in here. I'm just going to go right in this area to a second panel, where upon the loss of the utility, you isolate your system. And so we isolate our system, and then we diverge the power into another panel. Or yeah, you have to have a batteries in the system.
That's the way the system on my boat.
If you isolate them.
Grid power comes into it, if grid power comes into it, it bypasses that power to the main circuit. But if you lose grid power, it sends that power to a sub panel and only power the circuit.
Yeah, you have a transfer, some type of transfer switch.
So bad.
So that's basically, guys, the main component of it. I have 100 slides, but I'm going to go. This is the second section. I'm going to give you an option to leave, the ones who don't want to leave, and we start the second section here. Are you guys cool? Do anybody want to leave before we go into what I wanted to show? The second one is go to the solar system, show a few things about solar, and when pictures like these, and then we'll go over the hybrid, how to put all these systems together. And I'm not going to bore you with a lot of other stuff.
Should we take a short break?
Shall we? Okay. You guys want to take a short break? Quick break and then we'll, okay. Sorry. We just keep going here.
So when do you want to reconvene?
Reconvene, it's, shall we take a 10 minutes break if you guys want to switch and we'll reconvene? It's almost, what is it, 9 o'clock? You continue. It's 9, so 9, 10 after 9? Okay. I just want to show you a couple of other pictures if you guys are interested in. With the recording here. This is a three-phase system using a single-phase inverters. So you have a term, the same information, 1 through this, it adds just a couple of other things, 1 through 14. Talks through the turbine, disconnect, same grounding. With the only thing they do different in three-phase is they have a collector here. They have a panel, and a three-phase AC panel that collects all these, the power, and then take the three-phase and convert them into single phase to dump them across the inverter system. If you can see right in here, so I took a single phase. This is a single phase inverter, single phase inverter, single phase. They're repeating it, right? Single phase, 3 single phases. So you take the 3 phase, you split them into 3 single phase inverters, invert them to DC, and convert them to DC, invert them back to to AC, and then dump them as a three-phase system here. Nothing changed. The only thing I want to highlight here, right in here, can you guys see the ground and the neutral? This is a non-separated derived system. The neutral of the grid and the neutral of your inverted signal from the wind are bolted together. So that's really just an illustration of all the numbers if you have to have a three-phase system. Any comments, any questions with that? Okay, for the sake of the time, I have a whole PowerPoint presentation, guys. I usually go through the change inverter. I'm going to save you a couple of definitions and so forth. I'm going to jump right quick through these, and I know you can send me an email, and I'll shoot you this one in any format you want. The ideal speed is 24.6 miles per hour. So if you have 65 miles per hour, you're going to shunt that thing and bring it to a halt. So I thought just to very quick go through it. It talks about the tower and the turbine and what they do, the output circuit that we talked about, the equipment. This is very important. This is the article that I told you guys. Every time you bring a system, a power system into a building, you have to go to this 705. Long story short, we will tell you have to identify all sources of power at the disconnect service disconnect of the building by a label. So, and we'll talk, if you have a hazardous location, what I did is I slice it a lot because it's a new article. I will be teaching it for our students. So I thought just go through the details. And I want to spare you, if you're installing this in a hazardous location, what do you need to do? Well, have to adhere to the hazardous location, right? So a lot of things, if you run them in parallel, you have to also adhere to the rules of 705. 705, Article 705 is the parallel, meaning you have to sync them before we drop them to the grid. You have to identify all sources of power. You have to have a disconnect from every source of power, and so forth. So this is interesting. Who can install this system? All the wannabe, like my friend Jeffrey, will install an electrical system. All the wannabe electricians are not. They're supposed to be qualified. This is the first time in the NEC code book, guys, they install the word qualified person in a lot of places. Solar have to be also installed by qualified person in 2011. Brand new. This system have to also be installed by qualified people. And the code defined the qualified. I'm going to spare you a little bit of the qualification. This is very, very important. The inverter that you use have to be identified and listed by a third party like we know, like UL. You can't just custom design your own inverter. So a couple of things, diversion load and all this good stuff, and I'm going to move through these, unless you guys want to stay here until 9 o'clock today. No? It talks about receptacles. It talks about the wiring circuit for wiring methods. This is limitation. Only in dwelling, you can't go higher than 600 volts. I mean, who can go higher? I mean, you can't go higher, only in dwelling. Now, if you have non-dwelling, you can go as high as you want. You can put 13,800 turbine if they make them at this size. So just be aware that the only voltage limitation on this system is in dwelling, 600 volt. If it's non 600 volt, if it's not dwelling, you can go as high as you want to. Also in dwelling, if you're doing it on your farm, the voltage to the ground cannot be higher than 150 to ground. So that will limit you to a 208, 120 system, 240, 120. You can't put 480, 277 on dwelling, and shall not be accessible to other than qualified people. So there's limitation on the voltage that you can use here. Talk about the turbine sizing, and I'm running through because I want to take you to the solar. We don't have a whole lot of time, guys. I'm just showing you what the sizing and all this good stuff. I'm picking a couple of things. Possible backfeed. Backfeed, these disconnects can be energized from both sides. The disconnect of the inverter, the power could be coming directly from the grid or directly from the wind. So the inverter disconnect, the AC disconnect from the inverter, you have to identify it as two sources of power. So if you really disconnect the inverter, on both ends of the inverter could be hot, one from the utility and one from the inverter itself. So it's not just disconnected now, both sides are hot. So you have to have a label there, say, oh, by the way, be careful. Yes, you disconnect the system, but both ends of the disconnect are hot from two different sources. So it talks about this one, overcome protection devices shall be listed, the voltage carried and so forth. And let me just take you, because of the sake of the time, I just want to show you guys what we've done. I'm going to take you all the way to the solar and photovoltaic and the hybrid stuff. I thought I'm going to take us, okay, let's go directly into my solar. So really the wind, what I showed you guys, that 13 things for the wind summarize probably 85% what you need to know about the wind. 85%. So the rest I can email it to you, just detailing the stuff and putting it together. Solar system. So moving, because of the sake of the time, solar system. Solar system, there are two systems you can install, the AC inverters, AC system or DC system. This is directly from the NEC code book. You guys are familiar with this. What they do is they take all these cells. We all know how it works, right? These photons, light hit these cells, which is semiconductors, and it creates tiny little voltages, tiny little current. We collect these cells, and we end up with each panel is giving us 24 volt and 1 amp. Put them in series, you get yourself 600 volt and 1 amp, and then put them in parallel, you get 10 amps if you parallel them. So this is just a quick. So you have your cells, right? And you have so multiple cells make a panel, make a module, and multiple modules make a panel. So long story short, you're going to end up with these one panel right here. This is what we care about. So we take these panels. This could be one panel or multiple panels in series. So 24 volt. What if I want more than 24 volt? Here's 24 volt, 24 volt in series, get you 480. What if I need more voltage? Add another 24 volts. Yeah. And those of us who are familiar with electrical, if you want a higher voltage, you just put these panels in series. If you want more amps, what do? You grab them and put them in parallel. That's how they do it. They keep putting these panels in series until they say, we have 500 volt. We're not. Don't go higher than 500 volt. Right? So end up with, say, 24 panels in series, give us 500 volt. Then now, but they're giving us only 10 amps. I need more than 10 amps, right? What do? You grab another 24 panels, string they call them, and you tie the ends of these two. Here's the ends of this string and the ends of that one, you tie them together. Now you have 10 amps here, 10 amps here, in parallel, give you 20 amps. Means more power. And that's how they do the system. A couple of things that we always talk about, guys. There's a block diodes. We are DC here, by the way. What you're looking at is DC. To prevent one panel from feeding a fault to another panel, they will direct the traffic, if you can see. So these are just, without getting too much, to preventing one panel, instead of taking the power to the grid, sending power to another panel. So they have diodes to direct the traffic. And they have, under certain circumstances, they have every string, they have a fuse. A good design is to have a fuse for every string. Here's a 500 amp, I'm holding a 500 volt with 10 amps and with a fuse right here on the positive. You positive, on the positive, you put a fuse, a DC fuse. Okay, and then we put them right in this area here, guys. They call these the combiner. I'll show you a box. They call them combiner. They combine all these strings in a box with fuses, and they call them combiners. Just a box full of fuses and cover, so you can tie these. We have positive, negative out of each one. Negative to negative, positive to positive. Except the positives, they put a fuse before they tie in. For a fuse of positive. So that's the panel. They call it the DC system. This is the top is a DC system. I don't know how many of you guys heard of the AC system. The panel itself has an inverter with it. I've never seen it, but I've seen the DC system. The panels themselves have the inverter with them. So it comes with a panel and a tiny little inverter right next to the panel. So you're really connecting AC, not DC. You take the panel, convert it to DC, goes tiny little device at the bottom of it. Every panel takes it from DC to AC, and you're tying AC now. So you invert at the level of the panel versus you connect DC until you get whatever you want, and you invert it way downstream.
So it depends on what you're doing. So it's selling it, because if you're going to run a battery system, charging system,
Yeah, this one with it.
Well, it still will do it. You can go back to AC and
Yeah.
convert it back to AC again. That doesn't make sense because now you're two inverters.
Yeah.
So you don't really want one of those unless you're just going straight to the grid. It's the only thing that's really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it prevents you from capturing DC, because what you're getting right in here on this system is an AC, and you just tie to the equivalent direct. Versus what you're getting down here is you're getting a DC. So right out of this outcome here, I could have 600 up to 600 volt DC, 600 volt, and just for the sake, and I'm capturing 50 amps out of this system. And you do 50 amp, and these are all DC. Do your math, you multiply 50 by 600 volt, that will give you how much power you have in the system. That will get you the kW or kVA. So this is really the bottom line. I'll show you a couple of things, how the system works. The top one is a DC, the most common one is the DC. The bottom one is the AC, where the inverter comes with the panel. Here's how they do them. Does that look, you're gonna see the same terminology that we just talked about, the wind. They use interactive system, they use hybrid system and standalone system. They added the word hybrid here. But these one, we talked about them just before, guys. Here's the interactive system. So you collect all the sources. Can you guys see? These are all coming from different strings to a converter, and then you grab them down. This is up to here, it's DC. Now you invert them to the right frequency and right voltage, and you dump them inside your panel. And you're done. That's directly to the grid, no batteries, nothing. If you go to the standalone system at the bottom here, very similar to the wind. They almost copied the same info from the wind. Here's a standalone system. You get the same thing. You get your circuit from all these. Now we have a charger, because standalone system. We have a charger. We have to have you have to have some type of energy storage system. And then you go store it, or you can take it at DC level. This is my DC level. Or you can invert it back and dump it into the grid. Can I have a DC batteries with the interactive? Yes, if you want, you can have. Not a big deal. But the reason why the code, my understanding, they show always batteries with a standalone, because it doesn't make sense not have batteries if you're a standalone. You'll have a backup power.
So when you're in your classroom with your students, what are you using to train? Do you have like live comments, or are you have a trainer? Or what are you doing with your students?
That's next year. We're not there. No, we don't have a system.
Oh, is he, okay.
We're buying the equipment.
I could buy a training system, and then go buy those things.
Where is it? Good point. We looked at IBW in our area and a bunch of other people who have been doing it for a couple of years now. And they don't really use the trainers. They use a standalone system. We most likely, if I can convince the authority having jurisdiction, what we can do is we're going to, hopefully, if everything goes okay, we'll buy a couple of panels, say 6 panels, we'll put them on the roof of our building in a place where it doesn't interfere with anything else. And we tie in exactly like, that's the actual installation. And we tie them into our labs, and we'll let our students work on a standalone. Since this is completely installed, the students will not take it apart. So take measurements, see how it's installed.
I'll tell you what I would do, do what we did. We were already here.
Okay.
What we did is we bought the amateur trainer. It's got everything he's saying, right? It's all mapped out. It shows you exactly what to do. So you can go battery, strictly standalone.
Okay.
You can tie to the grid, or you can do interact. It does all three. Then, of course, we had grant money. I bought mock roofs, because I'll tell you the biggest thing is, it's not just learning how the system works. How do you mount this thing? If you're gonna mount this, instead of doing it on your roof every day, we did all mock roofs. And I went down to the Florida Solar Energy and saw what they had. And then we had, during the grant, I just got the money to do it, and they're still regularly out there.
Yeah.
Part of it.
I
That's what you need to look at.
Yeah, and I did finish that.
Our facilities people won't let us go far around.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're
Oh,
doing.
we got a $500,000 grant, and we put solar on every campus. So I have a thermal in each major campus. I have a rural, and I have EP at every single. Now I can go out there, and I said, the EP over that said I can go out and look at monitor and show the students how it works. And I have a separate training system for just theory and one for live installation of every one of those vehicles. I have homebound versus that way. I really think this is really good. These slides here, which I'll send you an email, give you slides. But the key to this thing is you're going to have, if you're looking for equipment and all that, it's going to be almost as cheap as to buy a trainer. And then I got donations. In fact, we got 2 sets of donations.
Our other component that you didn't finish is one component standalone just sitting there for the student to take measurement. They will never go on the roof. They're not going to touch this component like yours.
Is it on wheels?
No. They're going to be on the roof. No, they will. If they go there just to look at it, they won't even touch it. And then another system that we're going to build inside of that. That's why this didn't finish now. And that system right now, we're looking at exactly what you did. A little bit of roof where the students can put their stuff take down inside of that with an inverter. So two systems, one to show and tell, and the other one to play with and stuff. Yeah, that's what. No, we don't want him on the roof of our building taking things apart.
That was the biggest issue we had.
We have what's interesting is we have a courtyard, which is really on the roof, but it's got high enough walls around it to where it actually can work as not work or anything. Not really and it's got rails and such. There's some HVAC.
How much good is it?
Yeah.
In Minnesota.
But my idea of the way that I was going to approach the alternative bidding, I actually want to do a trailer management system. Because what we would take all forms of it on a trailer, haul it out in the community, and then use our students to teach the community about it.
Well, if you look at the vehicle, it's all wheels. I can roll it. I can be indoors, it has a light display, or I can remove that into the sun. Any which way you want. Really ought to look at what the control has on there. That's what we spent a month deciding what's the best stuff, but it's got every bit of curriculum, whatever each one has to be.
Well, I think that's probably recognized by all.
No, it's all wheels. I can just carry it.
Wheel it.
But the components used on the Amazon are the same ones that they're going to buy from the supplier.
It's the exact same thing you showed over there.
Full size.
They're full size. Everything is full size. Self-produces 50 volts, just like you said.
And charging through everything.
Everything's there. You can tie it through. All you need, the only thing you need is if you're going to be carrying it on a trailer, is a generator to plug into 208 volts. That's all you got to have. Because you have to be tied to the grid with the rack, like we were talking about, to work. Literally have to be tied to the grid. Even if you build a station, you're going to have to figure out how to tie to the grid. If you're looking at 3-phase, which they have 3-phase, you're going to need that. That's why we look at all avenues here. High schools, the college next door is trying to borrow it from me because they want to do a demo for their students. So I'm working with the VP in that area to see if I can help them borrow it and have it. Yeah, and I really think you should look at that because the cost was so effective. I thought, man, and I only need one. I only need one, and I want two different trainers. One for learning and one for installation. You have to pull the wire, run your conduit, everything. It was really, really great way to go.
For us to do the truth, we hit the IBW was a very kind of dominated in our area. That's how they don't do the trainers like we said. It's nice to show and tell. They want an actual installation.
No, we do too. We have actual installation.
But then it becomes the issue because budget.
To learn the theory, understand the theory, they have to go in there and I don't like the plug and chug, but the one that is the installation is not plug and chug. They have to physically wire the trailer up. That's why when I was looking at it, I need something to get the principles down. So going out there and mounting the roof, they're not getting the principles of solar until the first thing I would do is go back and say, let's learn the principles like you're teaching us right here.
Yeah.
Then, let's go out and learn how to install it.
That's
After
exactly
you know
what we
it
should
is.
do.
Because you talk so much about safety, you know, so I
Let me-
wanted to know all the safety rules of what it is.
Because of the time, guys, let me.
Then you gotta train them to,
Install, and then I have a
how
live.
you actually do install.
Yes, yes. And then we have the demos, like he's talking to.
Yeah.
I've got EV cells and all
All
around
these
the
systems.
That's what our grant was designed for. And part of the grant, when you write the grant, we wrote it with trainers being built for us. And part of the grant was we need trainers for this, for the program we're running. The government gave us all that, for all of that.
That's
And I
cool.
said, wow, I was stunned, totally saw the grant.
Let me show you the last thing, guys. One more system I have in here. I know we have 10 minutes. This is just a quick modules you use familiar with it. Here's the combiner. A lot of people get confused with the combiner if you're not familiar with. If you can see, you can put your fuses on one side here, and then you pull them right here, directly all the way down with positive, negative. Inverters, I show you interactive inverters, a couple of disconnects that you have to have. Here's how, this is really nice. It shows all how the system is tied together. The only thing I want to show for the electrician is you have two grounding electrode system and you have to tie them together with a number 6 cover at least. So you have a grounding electrode system for the inverter DC side, and you have a grounding electrode system for the AC for your facility, and then these two grounding electrode system, as we know, have to be tied together. Though the inverter is a non-separately derived system, the AC of the inverter is not grounded through the inverter, it's grounded through the utility. So that's very, very important to figure. Let me show you in Minnesota. This applies to us in Minnesota. The lower the temperature, the more voltage the fixtures can get you. For you guys, probably wherever you are, not big deal. For Minnesota, it could go low. So say if we are right, let's just say right here. Look at this. Your multiplier, if the voltage is 100 volt, you're multiplying, your fixture will provide 121 volt. Who cares? At a lower temperature, you might exceed the rating of your conductor. So that's how you adjust. I'm sure if you guys do it, you pay a lot of attention to adjusting your voltage based on temperature, especially if you're in a low temperature climate like we are. So that's a temperature calculation. AC sizing, a couple of things I'm going to talk about the AC sizing. The inverter output continuous load, the amp of the inverter times 1.25. The DC part, what they do is they take the amps multiplied by 1.25 because of short circuit, and then they multiply it again by 1.25 because of the continuous load. They want the panel, if you grab the positive and the negative, here's a panel, positive, negative, you tie them together. They want the conductor to be able to handle the short circuit of the panel without creating fire. Now we're talking about the panel on the roof. You grab the positive and the negative of the panel on the roof, and you put the positive, you shorten this, positive to negative. You don't want the conductor that side, the positive to the negative, not to burn. That's how they size the DC part. So they multiply them twice for us, twice by 1.25. So I thought just to show you that one. Here's a very interesting how they do the system. I don't know if you guys, there's two ways of doing the system. There's the poor man's and woman job and rich man and woman job. If you're a poor man like Chad, the poor man, you come over here. That's what probably Mr. Chad, if I'll go do it this way. And you tie just a circuit breaker inside your panel and you invert, right? If you're a rich man, then you're going to go directly at the meter. So you can shoot here and shoot this way, more power. The only thing, limitation, so that's most likely what you do if you have a huge amount of system. You tie at the line, they call it the line side of a disconnect. I don't know if you guys can see it, right in here. And then you have a dual direction meter that can sell to the utility or buy from the utility. If you have a time delivery system on your roof, most likely what you're going to do is you're going to put 20 amp circuit here, and you tie your system right at this location here. So say this is a 20 amp circuit collecting 20 amp, and this is my 200 amp service at my house. Now, most likely if you have a 20 amps, utilities might not give you a dual voltage. You don't have enough juice to give it back. You have 20 amps, you barely can take care of your own business. So I thought this is really cool how you connect the two systems together. The wind, most likely if you have wind, your wind will be 99% of the time right here. If you have enough money to have erect a tower on the roof, you hope you will take advantage of selling to Excel. So I thought that was really nice to show here. And then this is just a picture of all these systems put together, a three-phase system. Because of the time, I'm going to jump, and I can email this to you guys, to the fuel. Here's the fuel cell system, very similar. Now, the only challenge with the fuel cell, you need the hydrogen. So you can put it into this cell, you put the oxygen, you bring hydrogen to oxygen, chemical reaction, you get water from one side, from the other side you get energy in the form of power. So these are 1 through 12 points. I don't want to go over all of them exactly the same. I summarized them all here for you guys. I'm going to email you. I'm going to email you that one. So that summarizes the whole system, how to put together. I just want to emphasize very quick on disconnect. Does that look familiar to you? The system have to have a disconnect here, and the inverter also have to have a disconnect. Can you guys see that? You generate, in this case, you generate DC. There is no AC. You generate DC from the fuel, and DC is beautiful because we can invert it. And then you have to have a disconnect to disconnect that system that looks something like this. And you're going to disconnect it completely for safety. Then you put it to an inverter, invert it at the right frequency and voltage, and dump it to the grid. And you can sell it the same way. You can sell back here and you consume inside your building. Sizing, all the sizing and all the stuff I just put, and all the requirements for you guys, all these points right here. So
You use one inverter for all three systems?
you can use one inverter for all these systems. Here's the hybrid. They call it the hybrid. Here's how the system. There you go. Here's a hybrid system. I thought this is really summarized the whole system. You have wind, you have solar, and you have fuel. But it's really interesting that how you can, yes, you can. I mean, you can bring an inverter DC from a wind, an inverter, and a solar inverter, and a wind inverter. At the AC level, if they're in sync, you should be able to dump it together. If they're in sync, you should be able to dump it together. I haven't seen it done, so if you look at this one, the way they do it, the wind part, they took the wind here, and my understanding from what I read about this system installed, so you take the wind power energy right in here all the way, and they use the wind as a source. See how it tied together in the combiner, and also these are DC, and they tied these two together on a combiner. That's exactly what you just said. They're tying the two to DC. DC, no problem. If you have 500 DC, 500 DC, can I put them together, positive to positive, negative to negative? No problem. They tie them together, and they use them to create hydrogen and store hydrogen. What they're doing here, because wind and solar are not, they can change, and there's no wind, no energy, no sun, no energy. They use the time when the sun and the wind is there to actually convert, create hydrogen, generate hydrogen, right? And why do they want to generate hydrogen? Because we want to store it as a source of power. So while the sun is there and the wind is there, they use the system to generate hydrogen and store it in these big tanks instead of batteries. Now, when the sun and the wind go, they take the hydrogen that's already generated and use it as a fuel cell, dump it into a fuel cell as a fuel for the fuel cell, and generate electricity. Does that make sense? So that's how they tie the two systems together. So at the time when the sun is there, now we're storing the energy right in here. Now we lose the sun, you convert it back into going to the grid or going back to your house, to your building. I thought that was a really interesting way of doing it.
The only problem with it is it's just, we gotta learn to store hydrogen.
Yeah.
You gotta learn to get it compressed and store it. If you're gonna store it, you have to have a massive tank.
To store this
Yeah,
system.
that's the only drawback. Otherwise, you're producing
Oops.
supply.
Yeah.
But that's great, man. That's good. See, I didn't understand. I thought maybe NEC was going to tell us that on the new code, because I haven't got the new code yet. But I thought they were going to make us do one inverter for every different system, tie back. Okay, so then you can do it all with one system.
They seem to do it at the DC because if you do it at the AC, then they have to give it synchronization.
I was thinking DC side, yeah.
DC side,
No problem.
with DC to DC, as long as they're the same voltage, no frequencies, you don't have to synchronize.
Or you could use a lower voltage if you put it in series, right?
Yes.
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 Yeah, there are two different
Yeah.
systems.
Yeah.
That would make
That-
smaller systems for you to create more.
So I thought that will summarize what I call it a hybrid. What we're going to be hoping we do at our college is do things like this. So hopefully, guys, if you have anything that benefits us, email it to us. We're startups here, and I'll give you a business card. I'll shoot you this PowerPoint presentation.
Think about that trainer too. You got to mention it's NAVSET certified training system.
Wow, that's
So if you're looking at NAVSET, which we'd have to have it, that was part of our
real.
So that's the thing. If you're just going to put anything out there, it's not going to be NAVSET certified unless they can certify it. So that was, I think. But if you have a NAVSET trainer like that, then when you build these other, it works. They'll still consider it that. That's the thing. Plus, you got to have a couple of installs in school, so you need to have installations. So you'll have that covered if you do it that way. That's right.
And then the next step is become a NAVSET certified testing center, so that when your students graduate, they've already got certification.
We're working on that.
We're there.
Good for you, Rich.
Right. Our economic.
You'll get a couple of emails from me then.
Yeah, matter of fact, we should sit it down. We can walk the campus, we go through whatever you want to really look at what we did. I can show you the trainers, all that. Got time to do that. That would be good, because Atlanta is an hour from us. I can pick you from Atlanta Airport, where you can spend as much time as you want to spend. Thank you.
When we first started, I was very little about the solar installation. And so it was John Cole, was at the training range. Did all the research for me. I said, we need trainers, we need things that are loadable that we can take from campus, and we can take to high school and show it down. It's gotta be sturdy, but it's gotta meet certification requirements. So he did the research for me, came up with Amazon trainers, which are more expensive. They're more expensive than the level, but they do so much for it. I mean, they hand you the curriculum, it's done.
And it's NAVSET. I thought we had a problem with NAVSET on the laptop. You gotta be careful with these things. They are NAVSET. They gotta prove it. They have the certifications and everything. That's what really, I think, really swayed us over. He showed